Hey guys, tonight we slip down a dim rain-slick alley in the heart of London around the year 1850. The stones are cold beneath your bare feet. A horse-drawn cart clatters by, nearly splashing you with something that absolutely isn't water. Your mother, pale and sweating, has just given birth to you on a pile of rags beside a public bakehouse wall. The midwife wipes you off with whatever cloth she can find. There's no warm hospital bed, no sterile instruments, just soot sweat, and the distant echo of bells tolling another death. Welcome to life Victorian style. You probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing where in the world you're all tuning in. Now dim. The lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're born into a world that isn't waiting for you. It barely notices. Your mother may be a laundress, bent over steaming tubs 12 hours a day. Your father, if he's around, might be a dock worker or an ex-soldier, one accident away from total destitution. Infant mortality in Victorian England hovers around 1 in 3. That's not a scare stat. That's your odds of not making it to your first birthday. You're swaddled in rags, not toasty cotton. No lullabies, just the cry of other newborns and the squeak of rats. There's no maternity leave. Your mother may strap you to her body and return to work within a day or two. You feed when she can stop long enough. If she can't breastfeed, they might try pap, a kind of mush made from flour and water. It's often left out gets moldy, and let's just say the bacteria don't take days off. The street outside, not a place for strollers. There's horse manure chamber pot, slosh from upper windows, and broken glass all swirling together in what one Victorian observer called the eternal mud of London. Babies like you might develop teething diarrhea, a polite phrase for what was often fatal dysentery. Historians still argue whether this was caused by teething itself or the unsanitary teething objects handed to infants woodbone, sometimes even coral dipped in brandy. Because nothing says soothing like alcohol-soaked bone, and then there's your name if you get one. Some parents delay christening because they're not sure you'll survive the month. Superstitions run wild, tying red threads to your wrist to ward off evil spirits, hanging iron scissors above your cradle. They do anything to protect you, but science, that's still catching up. Louis Pasteur won't fully get credit for germ theory for another couple decades. You live in what's politely called shared housing. In truth, it's a one-room flat crammed with another family, maybe two. Your cradle might be a drawer. If you're unlucky, you sleep under the stairs or near the fireplace, which is cozy, until a coal spark catches your blanket. Fires are so common, some mothers sleep with one eye open and a water bucket beside them, still hungry. Hope you're not lactose intolerant. Cow's milk isn't pasteurized and is often watered down by greedy sellers. Or worse, chalk and plaster powder are mixed in to thicken it, giving your fragile little body the nutritional equivalent of a brick. There's no refrigeration, so milk left out too long becomes a gamble, a creamy curdled roulette. And doctors, they'll see you but only if you're dying dramatically. For most illnesses, your mother relies on the local herbalist or midwife. A little chamomile for colic, a mustard plaster for cough, or you guessed it, a bit of opium in syrup form sold over the counter. Godfrey's cordial and mother's friend were common remedies. Yes, they calmed the baby. They also slowed breathing. You sleep peacefully until you don't wake up. Oh, and should you be born with a visible disability or any health complication, society offers no mercy. Many such children are labeled feeble or doomed. Some are left out of records altogether. If you're lucky, your family hides you away, prays, and does their best. If not, you may find yourself in the cold arms of an institution where survival rates are even worse. By now, you've maybe reached 3 months old, an achievement. If your mother had to go back to work, you're left in what they call a baby farm. These are early, unregulated daycares, cramped tenement rooms, where dozens of infants are watched by one desperate woman. Some of these places are so negligent that babies are found tied into chairs to prevent them from falling over or escaping. More than a few never make it back home. Some farms are even caught committing infanticide for profit-keeping the baby's wages. Yes, they get paid for keeping you alive while letting nature take its grim course. It's not a fairy tale. It's a fee-for-silence death trade. Still alive. Then congratulations, you're now a Victorian infant who's survived filth, famine, and fraud. You may not realize it yet, but your body is already adapting. Your immune system's being forged like armor in a toxic blacksmith shop. You cry when you're wet, scream when you're hungry, and kick when touched with cold hands. Your lungs are tiny, but they are stubborn. Quirky tidbit for the night: some upper-class families actually used goat nurses. That's right. Nannies were sometimes replaced with actual goats kept indoors to suckle noble infants. Talk about a house pet with a job description. But before you assume rich babies had it easy, remember even they were at risk. Queen Victoria herself lost her second daughter Alice to diphtheria. Illness made no class distinctions. The only difference was whether your death was mourned publicly or quietly ignored. You don't yet know what the world holds, but it's already taught you one brutal lesson: survival is not a given. It's a game of inches luck and a mother's sleepless willpower. And as you lie in your makeshift crib, whether that's a drawer, a coal box, or a cousin's outgrown basket, you hear the muffled sound of street vendors calling babies crying and a neighbor coughing through the wall. It's all so normal. For you, it's the lullaby of the Victorian cradle. You'll need sleep. Tomorrow might be your last. By now, you're a few weeks old, maybe even a couple of months, a true overachiever by Victorian standards. But the real test of survival is just beginning. You're not just a fragile little human in a dangerous world. You're a fragile little human inside a freezing tenement wrapped in damp cloth in the middle of what passes for a nursery in 1850s England. Your crib, if you have one, is hand-me-down wood, splintered and squeaky. More likely, it's a drawer or a basket lined with whatever scraps your mother could find. No mobiles spinning gently above your head. No lullaby sound machine. Just the rattle of rats, the wheeze of your grandmother's lungs, and the occasional crash when something falls from the overcrowded shelf nailed crookedly to the wall. The air is cold, not brisk or refreshing. bone-deep cold. Victorian houses are barely insulated, and firewood is expensive. Your family might rely on coal, but the smoke it gives off fills the room with soot and sharp bitterness. When you breathe in, your tiny lungs sting. You cry a lot, not just because you're a baby, but because everything hurts. Your skin is chapped, your nose runs constantly, and there's mildew crawling silently across the wall next to your face. Blankets. Maybe. Maybe not. Fabric is reused, repatched, and rethreaded until it can't hold itself together anymore. Some families share one heavy woolen sheet across 3 or 4 children. You might get the corner. If your family is lucky, your mother warms a brick in the hearth, wraps it in cloth, and tucks it beside you. But that brick doesn't stay warm for long, and if no one's watching closely, it might even catch fire. Fires are a cozy Victorian tradition until they aren't. And then there's your diaper, or what passes for one. There are no disposables, no wipes, no creams with fancy lavender scents. Just old rags reused and barely rinsed. If you have a rash, it stays. If it bleeds, tough luck. Soap exists, yes, but it's not antibacterial. And it's too precious to waste on a baby's bottom unless there's visible grime or a suspicious smell. And honestly, everything smells. Historians still argue whether the so-called nursery hygiene crisis of the early 1800s was purely a matter of ignorance or more about sheer poverty. Was it lack of knowledge or just lack of options? Because when your daily income is spent entirely on bread, soap becomes a luxury. You learn quickly that cleanliness is a privilege and not one you're born into. Your mother tries. She tries everything. She sings to you when she's home, though her voice cracks from the smoke. She wipes your forehead with her apron, tries to keep the lice from nesting in your blanket. She knows what happens to babies who cough too long or sleep too still. She's already lost 1, maybe 2. Death doesn't knock at the door. It just sort of sinks in quietly. A fever that won't go down. A shiver that doesn't stop. You don't cry as much. Your breath changes rhythm. And then some morning, there's just stillness. Here's a dark little Victorian tidbit. Some families, when death came, couldn't even afford a coffin. They would carry the body of their baby wrapped in shawls to the local workhouse or church, hoping someone would bury it. Some mothers kept the body overnight, not out of denial, but because they couldn't bear to let go just yet. You wouldn't hear about that in the polite society pages, but it happened. And even if you survived the first sicknesses, there's another threat lurking in your nursery, the milk bottle. Sounds wholesome, right? Not quite. These weren't glass baby bottles with rubber nipples. Oh no. Victorian bottles were often ceramic, shaped like miniature flasks, with long necks, perfect for trapping bacteria. The narrow spouts were nearly impossible to clean, and many families didn't even try. They just rinse it in water, maybe give it a wipe, and reuse it. The result? Something called infantile enteritis, a fancy phrase for gut-wrenching, deadly stomach infections. It claimed thousands of babies. Some doctors called those bottles murder bottles, and yet they remained popular. Why? Because they were cheap, easy to carry, and well, that's just what everyone used. Your nursery might have a window. It probably doesn't open. If it does, it lets in the cold and the stench of the street. So it stays shut, turning the room into a gas chamber of human breath smoke and dampness. Mold blooms like a garden on the ceiling. The wallpaper curls away from the wall. The baby next door just died of croup. You can hear the mother wailing through the thin partition. Your family might keep a cat not as a pet, but as pest control. Rats, roaches, fleas, all part of the ambiance. The cat is lean and nervous. It hisses at you sometimes, but it sleeps curled beside you when the fire's out. Its fur is warm. Its purring is the only soft thing in this room. You might get a rattle. It's probably made of tin or wood chipped and secondhand. One of the weird Victorian toys that makes no sound unless you shake it violently, which you're too weak to do. You gum it with your toothless mouth and immediately regret its splinters. What about a bath? Hilarious. Bathing a baby is a luxury few can afford. If it happens, it's in a shared tin basin with cold water and lye soap. You might be washed in the same water as your siblings after they've gone first. If you cry, they'll just go faster. There's no heating the water. If it's winter, the water is nearly ice. If it's summer, the basin's been sitting in the sun, covered in flies. And don't think your parents are ignoring you. They just don't have time to hover. Mother is out doing laundry or sewing shirts. Father, if he's sober, is looking for work or passed out from exhaustion. Your older sister might be watching you, barely old enough to speak herself. If you fall from the bed, hit your head, or choke on your own spit, there's no hotline, no ambulance. Just hope someone notices. There is a fringe belief going around during this time that babies shouldn't be held too much. It will spoil them. So even when you're crying from pain or loneliness, some parents are told to let you cry it out. Not because they don't love you, but because that's what the newspapers and pamphlets say is proper. Still here, still breathing. Then you've won today's round. You've beaten the bacteria, dodged the fire, and made it through another night in the Victorian nursery. Tomorrow might be warmer, or it might be colder, or maybe the rats will chew through the ceiling again. Who knows? But for now, you sleep wrapped in rags, cradled in shadows, and guarded by a cat with fleas. You're maybe 5 or 6 years old now. Not toddling anymore. You're lean from constant hunger and covered in a patchwork of bruises, flea bites, and soot smudges that no amount of scrubbing seems to remove. Childhood, as you understand it, isn't soft or slow. It's full of noise, cold hands, and the relentless ache of fatigue. You don't get a childhood, not really. You get a job. Forget crayons and naps. This is Victorian England, where you're the cheapest labor in town. And guess what? You fit into spaces grown men can't. Your fingers are tiny. Your back is bendy, and your need for money is greater than your need for safety. Your day starts before sunrise. You're shaken awake by someone your mother, a sister, maybe even your employer's boot. You dress in the same thin clothes you slept in because that's all you've got. If you're lucky, there's a crust of bread or spoon of porridge waiting. If not, you work on an empty stomach. Again, you're sent to a factory, a mill, or a mine. If you're in the city, maybe a textile factory. If you're in a rural town, it's probably a coal pit. And if you're truly unlucky, chimney sweep. Yes, you're shoved headfirst into narrow pitch-black flues with nothing but a brush and your own elbows. The soot coats your skin, gets in your lungs, and scrapes your knees raw as you inch upward. You cough constantly. Your eyes sting. And if you get stuck well, the foreman has a long stick and very little patience. Historians still argue whether the chimney sweep children or the match girls had it worse. The sweepers risked suffocation and falls. The match girls inhaled white phosphorus, which slowly ate away at their jawbones, a condition gruesomely known as phossy jaw. But don't worry, you probably won't get both. Probably. Factories are loud, hot, and terrifying. The machines don't stop for you. They don't even notice you. You slip between gears to untangle threads, or crawl under looms to sweep lint and pick up dropped bobbins. You have to time it just right. Misjudge by a second, and you lose a finger, or a hand, or worse. There's no first aid. Maybe a rag. Maybe a shrug. There's always another child who needs the work. Quirky Victorian fact. For today, some mill owners believe that children worked better when kept slightly underfed. Not starving mind, you just motivated. A full stomach made you sluggish. An empty one kept you moving. It's efficiency via malnutrition. You're not allowed to sit unless you're given permission. You don't get bathroom breaks unless someone remembers. If you fall asleep at your station, you're beaten. If you cry, you're laughed at. And if you run away, that's breach of contract. Some children were shackled to benches to prevent escape. And all this for pennies. Your wage goes straight to your family. Maybe you're allowed to keep a farthing or two for yourself. Enough for a stale bun or a piece of boiled candy if the vendor doesn't cheat you. You work 12 to 16 hours a day, 6 days a week. Sundays are off, but that's for church, not rest. Your only relief might come during meal times. If you're in a better-run factory, they might give you a short break and a bowl of thin stew. If not, you eat as you work. Try not to drop food in the machinery. It happens. And the worst part, you're still growing. Your bones are soft. Your joints haven't finished forming. So the long hours standing or crouching deform your legs and spine. Rickets is common bowed legs, and hunchbacks are a hallmark of the working poor. Historians estimate that up to 50% of children in industrial towns showed signs of growth deformities. It wasn't unusual. It was expected. You're constantly dirty. Even when you get home, baths are rare. You're too tired to care anyway. Your hair is full of dust and lice. Your nails are black. Your feet bare in the summer, wrapped in rags. In winter, are always sore cracked or bleeding. But don't expect sympathy. Society praises you. Newspapers talk about the industrious youth of England. You're painted as a symbol of national strength, of economic progress. Your suffering is hidden behind polite numbers and bar graphs. Factories don't post memorials for the children lost in their gears. They just clean the machine and call it Tuesday. Sometimes you dream of being a clerk, sitting at a desk, using ink, wearing a shirt with buttons and shoes that match. But those are jobs for boys, with schooling, not for children like you. And speaking of school, let's talk about that loophole. Technically, some laws exist. The Factory Acts start rolling in by mid-century. They say children under 9 shouldn't work in factories. They limit working hours. They require some form of education. But enforcement is laughable. Inspectors, our few factories, are clever, and everyone knows the right bribe. Besides, your family needs your income. Desperately. So your birth year is fudged, your height is padded, and your education, well, education is a candle in a hurricane. Maybe you go to Sunday school. Maybe a charity school squeezes you in once a week. You learn to write your name to read bits of the Bible. But after a 16-hour shift, your eyes blur. Your fingers cramp. You fall asleep with your head on the desk. The teacher shrugs. It's not his problem. And let's not forget the air. In cotton mills, the atmosphere is hot thick and filled with tiny fibers. You inhale them constantly. Over time, your lungs scar. You wheeze even when standing still. Tuberculosis, bronchitis, and mill fever are all part of the package. Oh, and safety drills. Fire exits. Emergency protocols. Never heard of them. If something catches fire, and things often do your best, bet is to follow the rats. They know the quickest way out. If by some twist of fate, you're injured badly enough to be unable to work, you're not coddled. You're replaced. You go home useless, another mouth to feed with no hands to earn. Some children were abandoned at workhouses after accidents. Others begged on the street with stumps for arms and tin cups tied to their sleeves. And yet somehow, you keep showing up. Because not working isn't an option. Because a crust of bread is still better than none. Because your little brother's ribs are showing and you want him to eat. You don't think of yourself as brave. You don't have time to think of yourself at all. You sleep where you fall dreamless and curled around your own aching limbs. And at dawn, it starts again. School. That word might sound promising, like a sanctuary of chalkboards and learning of curious questions and kind teachers. But for you, the Victorian child worker school is neither escape nor joy. It's one more cold place you're required to go, filled with more rules, more punishment, and just enough learning to write your name and recite the alphabet. Maybe. If your employer allows it. The Education Acts haven't fully kicked in yet. Not until the 1870s does school become compulsory in England. Even then, the law comes with loopholes wide enough to drive a horse cart through. You might be required to attend school part-time, but your boss might forget to let you leave. And no one's checking unless someone important decides to. So let's assume you do attend school, a lowly, soot-smudged, sore-handed kid who just finished sweeping chimneys or threading needles for 13 hours. You trudge into a room that smells like wet wool and boiled ink. The floor creaks. The walls are bare. Your teacher is underpaid, overworked, and not particularly thrilled to see you. Your desk is a shared plank. You sit squished beside another child whose head might be home to an entire flea circus. There's no central heating. You blow on your fingers in winter to keep them from going numb. In summer, you swat flies away from your face while trying not to fall asleep. No snacks, no breaks. Just repetition and rigid silence. The curriculum is sparse but strict. You learn the 3 R's, reading, W writing, and arithmetic. Yes, the Victorians were a little flexible with spelling when it suited the rhyme. Mostly, you memorize by chanting. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6 over and over, while a stern-faced adult watches with a cane in hand. Historians still argue whether these schools were truly about education or mostly about discipline. Was it meant to uplift poor children, or simply make them more obedient laborers? After all, a child who can read a sign might avoid falling into danger, but a child who asks too many questions might start expecting things. Like rights. Your teacher might be kind, or not. Corporal punishment is expected, encouraged even. A missed answer gets a smack with the ruler. Bad posture knuckles. Talking out of turn. You're stood in the corner wearing a dunce cap. That's right, a literal cone-shaped stupid hat to shame you in front of your classmates. If you're a girl, they might just scold you sharply. If you're a boy, it's the strap. But worse than the punishment is the boredom. Hours and hours of copying letters and numbers into a slate board that you erase and start again. Ink is expensive paper, even more so. Most children never write on paper. They scrawl on reusable slates with chalk that's too soft and hands too tired to grip tight. The chalk squeaks. Someone sneezes. A cough rattles from the corner. You try to stay awake. There's little time or room for creativity. No art class, no show and tell, no drama club. Your imagination is left at the door. You memorize the Lord's Prayer. You recite from the Psalms. You copy the same proverb 10 times in your best cursive. Sloppiness earns more than a frown. You're reminded that neatness is next to godliness, and messiness might be next to damnation. And let's talk about hygiene again, because schools are petri dishes of the Victorian world. Lice are rampant. So are scabies, ringworm, and boils. Children who arrive clean don't stay that way. There are no sinks, no soap. A communal outhouse in the yard if you're lucky. If not, a bucket in the corner. Don't knock it over. Still you show up. Because school offers something, structure, warmth sometimes, and maybe, just maybe, a chance at a better life. It's a sliver of hope, dressed up in gray wool and ink-stained cuffs, but only if you're allowed to stay. For many children, school is a place you visit in spurts, in between harvests, between jobs, between periods of extreme family need. If your baby sister gets sick, you stay home to help. If your dad loses his job, you're pulled from class to sell flowers or polish shoes. There's no consistency. You might learn to read 1 month, then forget it the next. Still, some teachers persist. Some schools, especially those funded by religious groups, try hard to nurture their students. They provide porridge in the morning or shoes if your feet are bleeding. They offer prayers and patience. They fight the uphill battle of teaching exhausted children who've never held a book before. But others, well, they go through the motions, get the head count, deliver the sermon, hit the bell, survive another day. You meanwhile try to focus. You fight the yawn. You blink and miss a number on the board. You try to remember the difference between there and there. Just kidding. Victorian school books don't touch that mess. A quirky little tidbit. Some Victorian schools used singing as punishment. If you misbehaved, you might have to stand and sing a solo in front of the class. Mortifying. Absolutely. Effective, debatable. And don't get too comfortable in your lessons because everything could change overnight. A family emergency. A job offer. A winter illness. Suddenly you're gone. Out of the classroom. Back into the factory. Your seat is filled the next day. Your chalkboard wiped clean. By age 10, you might already be considered too old to bother with schooling unless you show unusual promise. And let's be honest, you're too tired to show promise. The teacher doesn't expect brilliance, just obedience, and yet somewhere deep in your soot-streaked brain you begin to dream. Not big dreams, not yet. But you imagine a life where you don't work until your knuckles split. A life with ink and paper and warm socks. Maybe a bakery job or a place in a shop. You've seen the boys who run messages for lawyers. Neat coats, real shoes. You want that. But first, you have to survive the dunce cap, the cane, the sneezing girl next to you with the weird red spots on her face, and the letters on the chalkboard that blur every time your eyelids start to droop. You grip your slate tighter. C-A-T, you write. Cat, it's something. School lets out. Or maybe you didn't go at all. Today your shoes have fallen apart again. Or your little brother needed watching. Or the mill foreman decided your fingers were better used tightening threads than holding chalk. Either way, you're back on the streets. And it's technically your free time, though. Nothing about it feels particularly freeing. Victorian England doesn't have playgrounds, not for the likes of you. There's no jungle gym, no seesaw, no brightly colored swing, set with soft bark underneath. Your playground is the alley behind the butcher shop. Your seesaw is a broken fence rail. Your toys, a stick of rock, and if you're extremely fortunate, a dead rat with intact whiskers. You and the other kids, grimy, elbowy, always scratching Rome like a little pack. The rules are simple. Stay out of the way of horses, don't fall into the river, and never mess with the chimney sweep gang down by the wharves. You learn these lessons quickly, usually the hard way. Play for Victorian children isn't optional. It's a form of survival training. You're learning how to duck quickly, how to climb fences fast, how to tell when a shopkeeper's looking the other way, so you can grab a bruised apple off the cart. You're learning to barter bluff, lie, and run. It's not recess, it's rehearsal for the rest of your life. You play games, sure. Hoop and stick if someone finds a bent wheel rim. Kick the can if you can spare a tin. But the most popular pastime is mud. Glorious, gritty, freezing cold mud. You stomp in it, throw it, sometimes eat it on a dare, and once in a while you find treasure in it. Buttons, scraps of fabric, broken brooches. One time, your friend swore he found a penny. Historians still argue whether such casual scavenging among the poor was technically stealing or just urban foraging. And then there's the animal kingdom. Cats mostly feral, dogs mostly limping, rats bold enough to share your dinner. You chase them for fun sometimes, tie tin cans to their tails if you're feeling cruel. You might have a pet, unofficially a pigeon you've named, or a mouse you keep in a box. But they rarely last long. Hunger, cold, or a cruel neighbor usually ends the friendship. Occasionally, a well-meaning adult appears and tries to organize something called street education. A curate or a kindly lady in boots, too clean for the neighborhood. They gather the children, sing hymns, hand out old books or broken crayons. You sit politely for a while, but eventually someone starts throwing pebbles or shouting rude songs, and the group scatters like frightened birds. The city itself is your jungle gym. You climb fences, slide down railings, sneak into abandoned buildings. but everything is sharp. Everything is rusted. You fall often, and there are no bandages, just spit and a scrap of cloth. One kid you know sliced his leg on a metal pipe. It never healed right. Now, he walks with a limp and a bitter mouth. Still, there are moments of lightness. Someone brings a puppet to the square. A crude marionette made of spoons and rags. The children gather. They laugh not just at the puppet's jokes, but at the ridiculousness of it all. You too giggle until your sides hurt. It's not that the show is funny. It's that you're allowed to laugh. And then come the market days, your chance to blend into the bustle. While adults haggle over pig feet and turnips, you lurk near the edges, hoping for scraps. Sometimes a fishmonger flicks you a gutted head. Sometimes a bread stall drops a crust. One time, an old woman handed you a whole carrot. You stared at it like it was gold, but don't get too comfortable. The market has beaters men with sticks who chase off thieving children. One glance is enough. You scatter. You always scatter. And the police, they're not your friends. If they see you loafing, you're told to move on. If they catch you stealing even a moldy biscuit, you might be hauled off to court. You've heard of the ragged schools and the reform houses where bad kids are sent to be fixed. No one comes out smiling. The threat is enough to keep most of you at least pretending to behave. Here's your quirky tidbit. For today, some children played a version of marbles with sheep knuckles. Actual bones. They'd boil them to get the grease off, then decorate them with soot or chalk. So next time someone complains about their Xbox crashing, just remind them of Victorian kids using ankle joints for entertainment. By late afternoon, the city feels different. The light slants, the shadows stretch. Your stomach growls, but you pretend it doesn't. If you're lucky, you get called home. Maybe there's soup, maybe just dry bread, or maybe you're not expected at all. Some kids spend their evenings curled on church steps or in empty barrels. You try to sleep, but the cobblestones are hard and your clothes are damp. But let's say tonight you're home. Home in the loosest sense. One room, 3 generations, one shared mattress, and a small fireplace with barely enough coal to take the edge off. You curl up in a corner, stealing warmth from a sibling's back. Your legs itch. Your nose runs. But at least you're inside. Before you sleep, your mother tells you to pray. You ask for food, for shoes, for a dry day tomorrow. You don't ask for toys. You don't ask for a birthday cake. You know better. And just before your eyes shut, you hear the scratch of something in the wall. Maybe a rat. Maybe your sister's cough. Maybe both. You pull the blanket tighter and whisper, "Good night." You made it through another day. You wake up coughing. Again. The sound is ragged and wet and echoes through the room like a warning bell. You're not alone. Someone else in the tenement is hacking too. Maybe in the flat above or behind the crumbling wall you share with 3 other families. In Victorian England, coughing isn't just annoying. It's a sign that something bad is coming. And the list of possibilities is long. A cold could be. The chill seeps through every brick, and the one threadbare blanket you share with your sibling barely covers your toes. But it might also be whooping cough bronchitis pneumonia, or something even worse, something that gets whispered about like a ghost consumption. That's what they call tuberculosis. And it doesn't just knock it barges in, sets up camp, and rarely leaves. But no one's rushing to take your temperature or spoon you cough syrup. There's no thermometer, and the only medicine in the house is a tiny bottle of something brown that smells like death and burns all the way down. Your mother bought it from a street vendor who swore it was guaranteed to soothe the little ones. You choke it down, gag, and curl up again. Doctors only if things get truly dire. A visit costs money your family doesn't have, and besides, you've heard stories, doctors who bleed patients or apply mustard poultices until your skin blisters or suggest laudanum opium mixed with alcohol to quiet the lungs. Effective sometimes, addictive definitely. But hey, at least you won't be coughing once you pass out cold. Historians still argue whether the rampant use of laudanum among children was willful neglect or just ignorance soaked in desperation. Because when your baby won't stop crying, and you haven't slept in 2 days, and the neighbors are banging on the wall to shut it up, one drop of silence sounds like a blessing. And if your family can't even afford that, there's always the herbal lady down the lane. She gives your mom a bag of dried leaves that smells like old socks and says to steep it in boiling water. You drink it, and now your stomach hurts too. Great. Let's say you're lucky and the fever breaks. You're back on your feet in a few days, paler and skinnier than ever. But many Victorian kids don't bounce back. Not because the illness is too strong, but because the treatment is worse. Bleeding, blistering, purging Victorian medicine is a bit like rolling dice while blindfolded and underwater. You might get better, or you might end up sicker from the cure than from the disease. And it's not just the sicknesses themselves, it's where they come from. Your drinking water, for example, probably comes from a public pump, or a hand-filled barrel that's been sitting outside all day. It's muddy flecked with something unidentifiable, and may or may not have had a rat swimming in it at some point. But you're thirsty, and options are thin, still feeling okay. Then try breathing. Just a deep inhale through your nose. Yeah, that's horse dung, human waste chimney smoke, and the sickly sweet stink of rotting cabbage all wrapped into one gust of fresh air. The Thames runs nearby, and on warm days, it practically glows with bacteria. The Great Stink of 1858 was so bad that Parliament had to soak its curtains in lime to keep members from fainting. No exaggeration. The smell was considered a national crisis. Quirky health fact of the evening, some Victorians swore by crocodile dung as sunscreen and birth control. Yes, crocodile dung. They'd mix it with honey and apply it like paste. So you know. Maybe that brown ointment your mum is smearing on your rash isn't quite what you thought. Infection is everywhere. A scraped knee might turn black. A dog bite might mean rabies. There's no vaccine, yet just slow, inevitable decline. Even teething is dangerous. Some doctors still think your swollen gums might be cured by lancing them open with a sharp blade. You scream. You bleed. You might even die from the infection that follows. And let's not forget about smallpox. The vaccine exists by now. Edward Jenner figured that out in the late 1700s, but distribution is a nightmare. If your family doesn't trust doctors or can't afford them or just misses the window, you're at risk. Blistered, fevered, and scarred for life if you survive. Some families sew bells onto their sick children's beds, not to hear when they wake up, but to hear when they stop moving. Then there are the mid-level nightmares: scarlet fever, measles, mumps, typhus, diphtheria. You might make it through one or two of those, maybe three if you're tough. But each leaves a mark on your body or in your memory. The boy down the lane went deaf after scarlet fever. Your cousin walks with a limp from polio. Every child carries a souvenir of survival. But here's the twist. Victorian society is obsessed with your health, in theory. There are pamphlets, sermons, handbooks, all full of advice. Keep your child clean. Feed them regularly. Avoid excessive excitement. Great advice, sure. But most parents can't afford soap, can't buy meat more than once a month, and have never seen a doctor in their lives. So you get by. You blow your nose on your sleeve. You scratch your scabs until they bleed. You sleep in damp sheets and wake up to bedbug bites. And when the fever hits again, and it will, you just pray it's not the kind that leaves you silent and still. Some children are sent away to the countryside to recover in the fresh air. If your family's rich, you stay put. Your view is a brick wall and a puddle full of cigarette butts, and yet you laugh, sometimes. Your friend makes a joke about your runny nose being leaky brains. You chase a paper boat in the gutter. You stick your tongue out at the coal cart driver and duck before he can throw something. You're still a kid somewhere under the grime. You fall asleep that night to the sound of coughing again. This time, it's closer. You roll over, pulling your ragged blanket tighter. You count the cracks in the ceiling, and you hope, just hope, you're not next. You haven't had a proper bath in, well, who's counting? Certainly not you. Baths in Victorian England are rare, uncomfortable, and in your case, a bit of a public spectacle. Hygiene isn't a daily ritual. It's a luxury, and one you're not likely to enjoy often. Which means, yes, you stink. But so does everyone else, so it mostly balances out. Let's start with your home. Likely a damp, poorly ventilated tenement, or a crumbling row house with more leaks than windows. There's no plumbing, no running water. If you're lucky, your family has access to a shared water pump in the street, though half the time it's frozen in winter or crawling with algae in summer. Bath water is fetched by bucket, boiled over the fireplace, and poured into a tin basin that may or may not still smell like yesterday's laundry. That water. It's reused first by Dad. He earned it then by Mum, then the older siblings, and finally you, the smallest and dirtiest. By the time it's your turn, the water looks like weak tea with floating lint. You step in anyway, because lukewarm sludge is still warmer than the wind cutting through the floorboards. Soap is precious. If you have any, it's a harsh brick of lye that leaves your skin red and your eyes stinging. Shampoo isn't even a word you know. Hair gets scrubbed with the same soap and maybe doused in vinegar to keep lice away if your family can spare the vinegar, which they usually can't because it's needed for pickling turnips. Still feel dirty after that? Don't worry. You'll be just as filthy again by morning. Historians still argue whether hygiene improved or worsened among the urban poor as cities industrialized. Some point to increased awareness of disease and personal cleanliness. Others argue that overcrowding, poverty, and limited access to clean water made meaningful hygiene nearly impossible. Let's talk toilets, or the grim approximation of them. Your building might have a shared privy in the backyard. It's a wooden shack perched over a pit. No lights, no flushing. Just a hole of smell, and maybe a newspaper scrap to wipe with, if you're lucky. And when the pit fills up, a night soil man comes around to shovel it out by hand. Yes, that was a real job. No, they were not paid enough. If you live closer to the Thames, you might skip the outhouse and just use a chamber pot, then chuck it out the window with a shout of Gardy-loo. A polite way of saying, look out below. That's if your family follows etiquette. Some don't bother shouting. And no, you don't brush your teeth. Not unless someone hands you a twig or a chewed-up cloth and tells you to scrape. Toothbrushes exist, sure, but they're for the middle class. Toothpaste is more of a gritty mystery powder. Many people just swish with water when they can find clean water, that is. You chew mint leaves if you can find them and hope for the best. Your breath could knock out a sparrow. You probably have lice. Everyone does. They're not even considered shameful, just irritating. You scratch constantly. Fleas, too. They live in your clothes, your bedding, your hair. And then there are the bed bugs. You don't even try to kill them anymore. You just coexist like itchy little roommates. Bathhouses exist in bigger towns and cities, but they cost money your family doesn't have. Some charities offer bath tokens for the very poor, but the line is long, and the water gets reused so many times it looks like someone's been washing chimneys in it. You once tried a public bath. The floor was slimy. A boy threw a boot at your head. The water gave you a rash that didn't go away for a week. Your clothes aren't helping the hygiene cause either. You've worn the same shirt for months. It's more whole than fabric at this point. Underwear. If you had any to begin with, it disintegrated weeks ago. Laundry is done by hand in a shared tub, boiled in lye if available, then hung over chairs or fences to dry. If the weather's bad, the clothes stay damp and musty. So you just keep wearing them. Still, there are rituals. Your mom might wipe your face in the mornings with a wet rag. She licks her thumb and smears away the dirt with that universal maternal move. You fight it, of course, because it feels weird and smells like onions, but part of you finds it oddly comforting. And yet, despite all this filth, you don't think of yourself as unclean. It's just life. Everyone smells a bit like sweat and coal dust. Everyone has yellowed teeth. Everyone picks at scabs and scratches at seams. Cleanliness is relative. You don't dream of soap. You dream of meat pies and dry boots. Here's your quirky tidbit for the night. Some Victorians believed that dirt actually protected children. A little grime toughens the Constitution, they'd say. And in a roundabout way, they weren't entirely wrong. Children raised in constant exposure to germs did develop stronger immune systems. The downside, a lot of them didn't live long enough for that immune system to finish developing. You do what you can. Rain becomes an accidental bath. A dip in the canal on a hot day, even if it smells suspiciously like cabbage stew, is refreshing enough. You scrub your hands with sand if you're desperate. You once tried wiping your armpits with a flower, but it just made the stink floral. And then there's the Thames. Glorious, glittering, lethal. You don't swim in it. You might paddle at the edges if you're feeling brave. But you've seen what floats by. Dead animals. Rags. once a bloated shape that might have been human. The river is a sewer in disguise. And still, it's one of the cleaner water sources nearby. By evening, the filth on your skin feels like a second layer. Your fingernails are black. Your feet are crusted with city grime. But you lie down anyway, on a straw mattress, maybe, or just the floor. The smell of unwashed bodies mingles with the smoke from the hearth and the sour tang of pickled onions. It's awful. It's normal. And you sleep, because tomorrow you'll wake up and do it all again. The dirt, the sweat, the scratchiness. You might get a bath next week, or not, but you'll survive. Maybe. It's late. You're hungry. That's not unusual. It's your default state. Hunger is the quiet companion of every Victorian child, like you curling up in your belly and gnawing gently, sometimes, fiercely always there. You go to bed with it. You wake up with it. You walk to work with it, and it follows you like a ghost all day long. Let's talk about food, or rather the lack of it. Your meals are at best predictable and repetitive, at worst non-existent. Breakfast, if it exists, might be a heel of dry bread or a spoonful of gruel. No, not oatmeal. The word gruel doesn't just sound sad. It is sad. It's thin porridge made from oats or flour boiled in water until it's more soup than solid. Sometimes it has lumps. Sometimes it has a bug or two. No one complains. Lunch is what lunch you're working. If someone in the factory feels generous, maybe there's a chunk of suet pudding, all fat and flour, or a boiled potato. But most days, you eat with your eyes while walking past market stalls, sniffing toward roasting chestnuts like a dog that's forgotten it's human. Dinner is the big event if anything's left. A watery stew filled mostly with cabbage and mystery, bits of onion, maybe a sliver of meat if it was a good day, bread to soak it up if you're lucky. The bread's often stale, hard enough to chip a tooth. Not that you'd notice. Your teeth are already halfway gone thanks to sugarless everything, and maybe gnawing on charcoal to relieve toothaches, which is somehow worse than it sounds. And sweets, please. Sugar is expensive. A boiled sweet, a peppermint stick, or a licorice twist is a rare treat doled out on holidays or when you're too sick to smile. Sometimes you lick old wrappers just to remember what sweet used to taste like. Quirky snack fact: some children chewed on tar. Yes, actual road tar. It was free pliable and supposedly helped clean teeth. Historians still argue whether this was a form of child ingenuity or just a very slow poisoning. Back to dinner. You eat with your hands. There are no napkins, no proper plates, just tin bowls and cracked mugs. Everyone shares. If the stew's hot, that's a bonus. If it has flavor, a miracle. If it has weevils, just close your eyes and chew. Sometimes food isn't even part of the day. Your parents didn't get paid. The work dried up. The flour tin is empty, so you drink water and pretend it helps. Some families eat flour mixed with lard, rolled into gray dumplings that sit like stones in the stomach. Others boil scraps, carrot tops, onion skins, and bones scavenged from the butcher's trash. It's called potluck, and no, it's not festive. You've heard of the great Sunday roast beef potatoes, Yorkshire pudding. But that's just a legend in your world. You've seen it maybe once through the window of a pub, or caught the scent wafting from a richer home. It smells so meaty it hurts. Your Sunday meal is usually the same as every other day, maybe served on a slightly cleaner plate. And when the hunger gets bad enough, when your stomach growls so loud it makes people look, you start getting ideas. About apple carts, about unattended meat pies, cooling on windowsills rare, but they exist. About markets and sleight of hand. You know the risks. You've seen kids get caught, beaten, dragged off by constables. But hunger doesn't care about consequences. It whispers louder than fear. Still, you're not a thief. Not yet. You might beg. Not for money, people don't give money to children. But maybe for crusts, for potato peelings, for drippings from the roast pan. And on a really good day, a shopkeeper takes pity, hands you a bruised apple, a broken biscuit, a chunk of cheese gone hard around the edges. You savor every bite. And let's not forget the school dinners. If you're one of the lucky ones who goes to a school with a charitable sponsor. Thin porridge again, maybe sweetened with treacle on special occasions. You lick the bowl. You lick the spoon. You lick your fingers. Another child tries to trade their crust for your half-eaten carrot. You trade. You both feel like kings. But food isn't just about hunger. It's about health. And the Victorian poor diet is horrendous by modern standards. Lacking in protein, iron, vitamins, most kids are anemic, pale, and undergrown. Rickets is everywhere your legs might start bowing by age 8. Your hair is brittle. Your nails are thin. Your energy comes and goes and sputters. Want something green? Hope you like boiled cabbage. It's cheap, smells like wet socks, and repeats on you for hours. Fruit only, in season, and only if it's bruised beyond selling. Milk. Not unless it's watered down and starting to turn. Meat. Ha! You've got a better chance of seeing a comet, yet your parents do their best. Your mother stretches every shilling cuts, mold off bread, boils bones until they crumble. She tells you stories over dinner to distract from the taste. Sometimes she sings. Sometimes she cries. You pretend not to notice. There's one night you remember someone brought home an actual chicken. It was old tough, probably stolen. But she roasted it over the hearth, and the smell filled the whole room. Everyone laughed that night. Everyone went to bed full. You dreamed of chickens for a week afterward, and then there are the bad nights, the ones where your stomach aches and no one speaks, where the stew burned or didn't stretch far enough or just never happened. You curl into yourself and think of food, real food, pies, puddings, breads with jam, biscuits dipped in hot tea. You've never tasted any of these things, but you've heard the words, and they roll around in your mind like candy. Sometimes you talk in your sleep. Sometimes you say please or more. Your mom hears it. She pretends she doesn't, because what else can she do? You wake up hungry again, but you're used to it now. Hunger is your neighbor. It walks beside you down the street and waits for you after work. But you keep moving, keep chewing, keep swallowing, because surviving in Victorian England isn't about feeling full. It's about not being the first one to faint. Home, sweet home. Or something like it. By now, you're beginning to realize that home in Victorian England doesn't mean a cozy cottage with flowers by the windows. and warm soup on the stove. It means a room possibly just half of one shared with enough people to start a small football team, and none of them particularly quiet. You live in what's called a tenement, a word that sounds technical, but really just means a tall, narrow building, crammed to bursting with as many families as will fit, and a few more who don't. Your room might be on the third or fourth floor, reachable by stairs so steep and splintery they qualify as an obstacle course. The front door doesn't lock. The windows don't close all the way. The roof leaks. The floor creaks. And the walls are so thin that if the man next door sneezes, you bless him instinctively. Privacy. You have none. You share your bed if you're lucky enough to have one with 2 or 3 siblings. Sometimes a cousin, sometimes a stranger. Don't ask. The ceiling is low. The air is thick. There's always a smell, damp clothes, old stew, and that musty rot of wet plaster. And behind it, all rats. Real rats. Not metaphorical ones. The kind that scurry in the shadows, nibble your shoes, and occasionally stare you down, like they're deciding whether you're worth chewing on. You hear them at night, scratching inside the walls, squeaking overhead. One of them once chewed through your blanket. Another time, your baby sister woke up with a bite on her finger. It bled for a day. Your mom said it was fine. It probably wasn't. Historians still argue whether Victorian rats or Victorian landlords were more dangerous to child welfare. It's a close race, and then there are the bugs. Fleas in the mattress lice, in your hair, bed bugs in the walls. You scratch constantly. You scratch in your sleep. It's a rhythm you don't even notice anymore. Your scalp is a battlefield. Your arms are dotted with red bumps, like a constellational map of suffering. Every piece of furniture is second-hand or third or fourth. A chipped table with one leg shorter than the others. A stove that smokes when lit and sometimes spits sparks. Chairs with straw, stuffing poking through the seat like tiny spears. You've impaled your thigh on one more than once. You never learn. And that stove, it's the heart of the home. Not because it works well. It doesn't. But because it's the only source of heat. In winter, you gather around it like it's a tiny sun. You toast your hands, roast crusts of bread, and try to forget that the window has iced over from the inside. But the stove comes with risk. It runs on coal, which means constant black dust coating everything, your food, your hair, your lungs. The room smells like ash. Your clothes always feel slightly greasy. You're always coughing. Speaking of food, your kitchen is probably a shelf, a bucket, and whatever pan hasn't gone rusty. Cooking means boiling things over the fire or toasting them directly in the embers. If the fire's out of coal, you just eat it cold. If there's no food, well, see previous section. The washing situation is delicate. You bathe, if at all, in a metal basin. You do laundry in the same one. Water is carried up the stairs by the bucketful. You use it until it's gray. Then you throw it out the window or down the stairs, hopefully, when no one's passing by. And yet, people try to keep it nice. Your mom might tuck a piece of cloth over the mantel to make it look like a shelf. Someone pins a newspaper clipping to the wall, a picture of a dog in a hat maybe, or a torn-out hymn. There's a cracked mirror that leans against the wall. You avoid it. You don't want to see yourself right now. Your sleeping arrangement depends on who got there first. Beds are claimed early. Some kids sleep on the floor, some under the table. A few curl up under chairs like cats. If you roll too far, you end up against the freezing wall. If you roll the other way, someone kicks you in their sleep. There's no winning, and don't think bedtime is quiet. The neighbor's baby is crying. Someone upstairs is singing. A man is snoring so loudly you'd swear he's practicing for a competition. You've learned to sleep through anything except silence. Silence usually means something bad has happened. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some families, to save space, hung their children's beds from the ceiling. Rope cradles suspended like hammocks swaying gently in the smoky air. It sounds charming until you realize they were often too close to the stove and sometimes caught fire. So, swings with a catch. When illness hits the building, and it always does, it spreads fast. Coughs echo through the hallways like ghostly songs. You hear people wheezing in the stairwell. Someone has a rash. Someone else has the shakes. There's no isolation, no quarantine. You all just keep living together in that crumbling petri dish because there's nowhere else to go. You know the sounds of your building by heart. The creak of the top step, the groan of the pipe in the wall, the sharp knock of your neighbor's cane. You know when someone's coming home, when someone's fighting, when someone's died. And you also know its warmth in a strange way. You know the smell of your mom's soup. You know your sister's snore and your brother's sleep mumbling. You know the sound of your father's boots kicking off at the door. You know the comfort of being in the same room with everyone you love because no one has space to leave. It's chaos. It's cramped. It's crawling. It's home. You fall asleep with your face against a lumpy pillow, your feet tangled in someone else's coat. The rat in the ceiling scrapes again, but you're too tired to care. The fire crackles low. The room hums with breath and murmur, and the quiet rhythm of people simply surviving. You're one of them. The rooster doesn't wake you. There is no rooster. Just the factory bell clanging like a rusty alarm clock for the entire neighborhood to hear. You jolt awake if you ever truly slept, and you already know what the day holds work. Not pretend work, not chores for allowance, real exhausting soul-warping labor. And it's not just because your family needs the income. It's because children are the most expendable workers around. You're not a student. You're not a dreamer. You're part of the economy now. You pull on the same clothes as yesterday, still damp, still dirty. Your boots, if you own any, are cracked and stiff. If not, you wrap rags around your feet and pray it doesn't rain. You're out the door before the sun fully rises, walking with the other half-asleep kids who look like miniature ghosts in gray fog. This morning, you're headed to the match factory. Yesterday, it was the laundry. Before that, maybe the brickyard. You take what you can get. But the match factory is its own particular hell. Inside, the air stings. The smell hits first sharp chemical, almost sweet in a sickening way. You're working with white phosphorus, a toxic substance that gives matches their spark and slowly eats away at your jawbone if you're exposed too long. It starts with toothaches, then swelling. Then your face begins to rot. Fossy jaw, they call it. You've seen a girl lose half her face to it. She didn't come back after lunch one day, but you need the work. So you keep dipping splints into the poisonous paste, arranging them on drying racks and trying not to breathe too deeply. Gloves, masks. Not even a rumor. Historians still debate whether factory owners truly understood the dangers of phosphorus or simply chose not to care. Either way, you're the one whose jaw is on the line, and the match factory isn't even the worst gig. There's the coal mine. If your family's in a mining town, congratulations. You start your shift before dawn, crawling into black tunnels no taller than a doghouse. You work as a trapper. Your job is to open and close a wooden door to regulate airflow. Sounds simple until you realize you're alone in the dark for 12 hours, with only a candle, if that, and the distant sound of picks and coughing. Or maybe you're a hurrier, pushing carts of coal on rusty tracks, with your head down and your spine arched. You're underfed and overworked, and your bones ache like you're 70, not 7. If the tunnel collapses, no one hears you scream. You know a boy who got crushed under a cart. Another who lit a match too close to a gas pocket. There was an explosion. They never found all of him. Then there's the scavenger work, mudlarking along the Thames. You wade through sticky, sucking river mud, looking for scraps, bits of rope nails, coins bones to sell. You're cold-soaked, and your feet never fully dry out. Trench foot becomes your default setting. You once found a boot with a toe still inside. You didn't tell anyone. Or you're a pure finder, the Victorian euphemism for people who collect dog poop for use in leather tanning. You carry a bucket. You sniff constantly. You get mocked, but you make pennies, and pennies matter. And then there's the mortuary work. Some kids are hired to lay out bodies, wash them, dress them, hold candles during funerals. You're surrounded by death before you even understand what it means. One child worker had to watch over a dead man overnight. His payment was a crust of bread and nightmares for life. Quirky job of the day resurrectionist assistant. That's right, some kids were paid to help dig up corpses for medical schools. A fringe but real job, especially before legal body donation. You carry the sack. You keep watch. You pretend it's not a person you're holding. Not all jobs are grotesque. Some are just plain miserable. There's street sweeping, where you walk behind horses with a broom and a bucket. There's shoe black, kneeling on cobblestones all day, polishing boots for impatient gentlemen. There's selling flowers, pins, newspapers, matches, walking for miles with sore feet and an empty stomach, shouting louder than the other kids to get noticed. But no matter what job you do, the rules are the same work. Hard, don't complain, and keep moving. There are no safety nets. If you're injured, you're replaced. If you get sick, you're fired. If you fall asleep on the job, you're kicked, literally. Your pay is docked for every mistake, and sometimes you're not paid at all. Your boss shrugs and tells you to be grateful you're working at all. Some children don't survive. You see fewer familiar faces each week. Some just disappear. Others are buried quietly, names misspelled or never written down. Your friends vanish the way smoke leaves a chimney. And the worst part, you get used to it. You learn to work with your head down your mouth shut. You learn to bandage your own scrapes, ignore your cough, and hide your limp. You learn to smile at the foreman, even when your hands are bleeding and your stomach is caving in. And still, you dream. You dream of a shop job, of standing still, of wearing real shoes, and being indoors without coughing. You dream of a bakery, or a bookshop, or anywhere your bones don't hurt by noon. You dream of growing up, even though you know that if you keep working like this, you may never get the chance. You fall asleep tonight with your hands blackened, your back sore, your fingernails split. You hear your mom whispering prayers by the stove. You hear the wind push against the windows like it's trying to get in. You turn your face to the wall. Tomorrow you go back. It's Sunday morning in Victorian England, and for once you're not working. The factory is closed. The mines are quiet. There are no carts to push, no flues to clean. Your body aches. Your eyes are crusted with sleep, and your stomach, yes, still empty, grumbles impatiently. But instead of collapsing back into your rat-nibbled blanket, someone nudges you and says, "Get up. We're going to church." You sigh, because while Sunday may be a day of rest, it's also a day of rules, rituals, and rumbling stomachs. You're not allowed to play. You're not allowed to run, whistle, laugh too loudly, or do anything that might suggest you're enjoying yourself. You are expected to be holy, or at least look like it. Your clothes haven't magically improved overnight. You wear your Sunday best, which means the least torn shirt and the pair of trousers with only one obvious patch. If you're a girl, maybe you have a bonnet. Maybe not. Either way, you try to look presentable. Your mom wets your hair to flatten it. She wipes your face with a damp cloth and licks her thumb to scrub the grime from your cheek. It hurts. You don't complain. You walk to church. Always walking. Through mud, over cobblestones, past shops you'll never afford to enter, and homes you'll never be invited inside. You pass chimney sweeps already at work, beggars coughing on steps, and a cart hauling what might be a dead horse. The smell of manure and coal smoke fills your nose. Inside the church, it's quiet. Cold, but quiet. The walls echo. Candles flicker. Your stomach growls embarrassingly loud during the first hymn. You shift in the pew. The minister drones on reading from the book of Proverbs about laziness and virtue. You recognize the tone God loves the poor, but only the hard-working, obedient ones. No mention of hungry, snot-nosed kids with blistered feet and dirt behind their ears. Historians still argue whether the Sunday religious culture in Victorian England was truly comforting to the poor, or merely one more form of social control. Were you being uplifted, or simply being taught to suffer quietly? You try to pay attention. You really do. But the sermon is long and full of words you don't understand. Your eyelids droop. Your sibling pokes you. The pew is hard. The air is dry. You fidget. Your mom whispers a warning, so you straighten up and try again. Sometimes the sermon is about hell, fire damnation, eternal suffering. You're not sure how that's different from your everyday life. Other times, it's about salvation, but only if you're good, clean, pure. You look down at your cracked hands and wonder if God cares that you smelled like fish water all week. After church, you stand outside while adults chat. You eye the richer families stepping into carriages. Their kids wear real shoes, polished and laced. Their cheeks are round. Their fingers don't look like pickaxes. You stare not out of envy, but out of hunger. You can see breadcrumbs on the child's collar. You could eat that collar. Once one of the church ladies handed you a bun after service. You said thank you with your mouth full. You didn't chew. You just swallowed and wished for another. She patted your head like you were a pet. Some Sundays, you go to Sunday school after the service. It's not like real school. It's mostly hymns, Bible stories, and memorization. You learn the 10 Commandments, the names of the apostles, and endless psalms. You're told that obedience is good and poverty is noble. You're not told how to spell your own last name. Still, you sing. Your voice cracks, but you sing. You hold the ragged hymnal and try not to mix up the verses. You don't really understand what Hosanna means, but the tune is nice, and the teacher seems pleased. And sometimes they give you bread after class, dry but edible. Then comes the long afternoon. You're back home. Your mother's trying to make a meal stretch. Maybe a bit of bread soaked in broth. Maybe a few boiled potatoes with salt. It's not much, but you sit in a circle with your siblings and eat slowly, pretending you're full after the second bite. Your father, if he's around, is quiet on Sundays. Tired, maybe hungover. He doesn't talk much. He smokes his pipe and stares into the fire. Your mother mends clothes or shells peas if she has any. You try not to get in the way. You'd like to go outside and play. You really would. But on Sundays, play is a sin. At least that's what your neighbor says. He'll shout at you if you throw stones or skip down the alley. One boy was whipped by his father for whistling on a Sunday. Another got slapped for spinning his hoop in the street. You keep your hands in your pockets. Sometimes you read. If your family has a Bible, that's it. If not, maybe a tattered penny tract from the church. You read the story about the Good Samaritan again. You think maybe you saw one once, someone who gave bread without asking for anything. But it was hard to tell. He moved fast. As the day winds down, the hunger returns in waves. You haven't moved much, but you feel weak anyway. Your sister curls up next to you. Someone lights a candle. The fire crackles low. The smells of the week, sweat, smoke, onions cling to everything. You kneel with your family to say prayers. You ask for strength, for food, for warmth. You ask that your mom doesn't get sick, that your boots last another month, that your baby brother stops coughing. You ask for a better life, though you're not even sure what that means anymore. And then you sleep. Sundays are supposed to be a break, a rest, but you feel more tired now than ever. Because tomorrow, it all begins again. The noise, the smoke, the labor, the grime. And somehow, despite everything, you'll wake up and do it. Because you're still here, still breathing, still surviving. The frost creeps in before you even open your eyes. It's there in the stiffness of your fingers, the painful tingle in your toes, and the thin biting air that somehow makes your blanket feel colder, not warmer. It's winter now. Not a cozy snowflake-covered postcard kind of winter, a Victorian winter, which means hardship, hunger, and a whole new layer of danger. Your breath fogs the air as you sit up. You can see it your own breath. Inside. That's how cold the room is. The glass in the single window is rimmed with white frost feathers. The floorboards are hard and icy under your feet, and your first step out of bed is like stepping onto a frozen pond, only with more splinters. There's no central heating. No hot water bottle. Just the memory of yesterday's fire and a few leftover coals in the grate. If you're lucky, your mother stokes the embers back to life. If you're not, she's out finding wood, or hoping someone's thrown out a broken chair that can be chopped into kindling. Your clothes are no warmer than in summer, just layered. A shirt over a shirt. Rags wrapped around your ankles. A scarf made from someone's old curtains. Still, the cold finds its way in. It always does. You walk around your room like you're trying not to crack every joint stiff. Every breath a frozen wheeze. And then there are the shoes. Or more likely, what used to be shoes. They're cracked stiff, maybe lined with newspaper if you've got it. Your socks are never dry. Your feet are never warm. If you're one of the unfortunate many, you go barefoot through the snow, your toes slowly numbing into nothingness. Historians still argue whether Victorian footwear for the poor ever truly qualified as protective or was just decorative optimism. Either way, your soles are full of holes. Outside, the world is whitewashed and silent. The Thames is crusted with ice. Icicles hang from gutters like knives. Chimneys puff constantly, but inside those homes, it's still cold. You step onto the street and instantly regret it. The wind punches through your clothes and grabs hold of your spine. You're awake now. Fully. You trudge to work or to beg or just to move. Movement is warmth. Every breath cuts. Your fingers feel swollen and numb at once. You shove them under your arms. Your ears sting. Your cheeks go red, then white, then stop feeling like anything at all. And with cold comes sickness. Colds become coughs. Coughs become pneumonia. Children drop out of school, disappear from work, vanish from the street corners. You ask where they went, and someone just shrugs. You see a boy with frostbite, his fingers black at the tips. He's hiding them in a scarf. You hear about a girl whose toes turned purple. She kept walking until they bled. No one took her to a doctor. They just gave her thicker rags. And that's the trick of Victorian winter. You keep going. Because you can't afford to stop. No one does. Work doesn't stop because it's cold. Begging doesn't stop because your hands are too numb to hold a cup. Cold is just another part of life, and indoors doesn't guarantee safety. Your home, remember, has more drafts than windows. The walls sweat with damp. Mold creeps like ivy across the corners. The air inside is so cold, your breath lingers like smoke. You sleep curled up, pressed into your siblings, trading body heat like coins. Sometimes you wake up with a layer of ice on your blanket. Sometimes your water tin freezes solid. Your mother does what she can. She makes soup, or what passes for it hot water, with a bit of onion or marrow. You hold the bowl to your face before you drink, just for the warmth. She sews extra stuffing into your sleeves. She wraps your feet in newspaper before sending you out. She says, "Keep moving," and you do. Here's your quirky winter survival fact. Some Victorian children tucked hot potatoes in their pockets to keep warm. Yes, actual potatoes. Cooked wrapped in cloth and used like hand warmers. When they cooled off, you could eat them double win. If you were lucky enough to have one, that is. Snow is pretty, but also lethal. It covers the trash piles The dung heaps the open drains. You slip constantly. Sometimes you fall through ice into slush that soaks your clothes and steals your warmth in seconds. A wet child is a dying child. You know this, but there's also strange beauty. Your breath, steaming like dragon smoke. The crunch of snow underfoot. The way the lamplight reflects off the icicles. For one brief second, everything looks clean, pure. You almost believe it. Almost. School, if you're still going, is freezing too. The classroom has a single fireplace that barely works. Your teacher wears gloves indoors. You huddle near your classmates for warmth noses, running fingers too stiff to hold chalk. The slate boards crack if they're dropped too hard. The ink freezes. And yet, the lesson goes on. You try to read the Psalms while your lips are blue. You forget your times tables because your teeth won't stop chattering. You fall asleep with your face against the desk, drooling just a little, and no one wakes you. Everyone understands. Sometimes a kind soul opens a soup kitchen, a warm room, a bowl of stew, a bit of bread. You wait in line for hours. You dream of stew. And when you finally get it, you burn your tongue eating too fast. You don't care. At home, your mother boils water just to create steam to make the room feel warmer. You huddle around the pot. You put your hands on the kettle. The steam curls your hair. For a moment, you feel almost human again, and at night, you pray not for toys or sweets, but for a warm bed, or a pair of socks, or just one morning when you wake up and your fingers don't ache. Your dreams are full of fire, not the scary kind, but the cozy kind. You dream of blankets, of ovens, of wool, and sometimes you dream of summer. You forget the cholera, the flies, the stink. You just want sun on your face and sweat on your skin. But for now, it's winter. And winter does not care how small or cold or tired you are. It keeps coming. It bites. It takes. And you wrapped in rags and bravery bite back. The ice melts. The wind softens. The streets stop crunching underfoot and start squelching instead. Winter loosens its grip, and you think, just for a moment, that you've survived something. You did. But now comes Victorian summer, and it's not here to be kind. It's not gentle sunshine and lemonade. It's sweat stench, sickness, and cholera. You wake up sticky, not with warmth, with heat. The kind of heat that clings, that suffocates. That makes it hard to breathe before you've even stood up. The thin blanket gets kicked aside. Your shirt sticks to your back, and the air in the room is thick, like soup gone bad. The windows don't open, or if they do, they just invite more heat in. And flies. Always flies. Your building smells worse in the summer. A lot worse. Because everything is rotting. The chamber pots overflow. The gutters bubble with filth. The drains clog and back up. And there's no rain to wash it all away. Just sun. Boiling, glaring sun. You walk outside, and the stench hits you like a punch to the throat. Manure, garbage, sweat, sewage. A perfume only the poor wear. Then come the flies. They're everywhere. Buzzing, crawling, landing on your food, your face, your sores. You swat them constantly. You give up. You let them have your bread because you're too tired to fight. You watch one crawl across your spoon and eat anyway. Everyone does. And then someone falls ill. It starts with a stomachache, then vomiting, then diarrhea, then a look, this awful hollow-eyed look that tells you they're not getting better. It spreads fast, too fast. Entire buildings go quiet, streets empty. Curtains hang limp over doorways like surrender flags. You know the word. You've heard it whispered, cholera. You don't understand the science. No one does not really. Germ theory exists, but it hasn't caught on. Most people still believe cholera spreads through miasma bad air. So they burn herbs, hang flowers, sprinkle vinegar. You do what your mum says, cover your mouth, stay inside, pray. Historians still argue whether the delay in accepting germ theory directly worsened the cholera epidemics or whether it was simply inevitable given the overcrowded slums and broken water systems. Either way, you are living inside the petri dish. Water is the enemy, but also your only hope. You're constantly thirsty. The heat dries your mouth, your skin, your bones. You want to drink anything, but you know better. The pump on Broad Street, where everyone gets water, is the source. They don't know it yet. But soon, a man named John Snow, yes, really will remove its handle and make history. For now, you keep drinking, because what choice do you have? You hope the bucket your brother filled this morning isn't the cursed one. You boil it, maybe if you have time and fuel. Most don't. You drink. You pray. Cholera isn't the only threat. Summer also brings typhoid, dysentery, diarrhea, and fever of unknown origin. Children vanish by the dozens. Your neighbor's baby dies. Another boy collapses in the street. You watch your friend cough and cough until he stops. There's no hospital for you. There's the poorhouse infirmary. But that's just a quiet place to die. Your mother dabs your forehead with vinegar water. She feeds you broth. She cries when she thinks you're sleeping. You survive, this time, but not unscathed. Your belly still aches. You're thinner than ever. Your skin has this odd gray tint. Your eyes look too big for your face, but life somehow goes on. Because even in the height of a heat wave, the world doesn't pause. Factories run. Streets buzz. Work continues. You sweat through your shirt before breakfast. You clean chimneys in long sleeves because soot burns worse on bare skin. You sell matches with sweat rolling down your back. You faint in line at the water pump and get kicked by someone who thought you were faking. Quirky summer practice of the day some Victorians stuffed their hats with lettuce. No joke. They believed the cool leaves would prevent heat stroke. You try it once. It wilts in an hour and makes your head smell like salad. You daydream about cold things. Ice cream, iced water, ice anything. But the ice trade hasn't reached your street. The upper class has ice boxes filled with Norwegian blocks. You have a cracked mug and some warm water that tastes faintly of rust. You long for shade. Trees are rare. Parks are fenced off or patrolled. So you tuck into alleyways and crouch by buildings, tracing shadows like treasure. At midday, the city becomes a furnace. The cobblestones are hot to the touch. The Thames shimmers in the distance, taunting you. You're tempted to jump in. Some kids do. They swim, splash, even drink it. You don't. You've seen what floats there. You've seen what it takes. It looks like relief, but it smells like death. And then at last comes evening. The air cools. The sun dips. You sit on a stoop and let your sweat dry. Other children emerge like ghosts. Someone starts a game. Someone tells a story. You watch the sky turn gold, then blue, then black. You sleep with the window open, if you're lucky enough to have one. You lie on the floor, away from the others, just to feel the breeze. A rat scurries past. A cockroach. You don't care. You're too tired. You dream of snow. Not the kind that kills, but the kind that cools. You dream of ice and rivers clean enough to drink from, and days where the sun warms, not burns, and somewhere nearby a bell rings. Someone else is gone. You're standing on your tiptoes, fingers gripping the wrought iron bars of a tall gate. Beyond it lies another world. A gravel path curves through a garden too neat to be real, flanked by hedges so perfectly trimmed they look painted on. In the distance, a grand house, no, a mansion with wide windows and polished brass fixtures gleams in the soft morning sun. And on the lawn, a child, just like you, only not. She wears shoes, real ones, black leather, with buckles that shine. Her dress is white, not off-white or patched white, but actual white, like clouds in fairy tales. She has curls, the kind that seem to stay in place on their own, and she's holding something red. Is it a toy? No, it's jam on toast. You stare like it's magic. This is the closest you've ever come to the world of the rich Victorian child, a species as familiar to you as a foreign king. She sees you and doesn't flinch. She's used to watchers. She knows the distance between your life and hers is not just about fences. You back away before someone scolds you, but the image sticks. The rich kids live differently. You've heard stories, soft beds with mattresses filled with horsehair, not straw, fireplaces in their bedrooms, toys made of tin porcelain, and even wood hand-carved into animals or puzzles, dolls with glass eyes and real hair. One boy at church once told you he had his own pony. You thought he was joking. He wasn't. They don't go to work at age 6. They go to school, real school, with books and desks and teachers who don't carry canes. They learn Latin, French. They get music lessons and drawing practice. Their handwriting is curved and graceful. Yours is chicken scratch on a chalkboard you share with 3 others. Their food isn't beige and boiled. It's roasted, buttered, and layered in sauces with names. They eat meat every day. Eggs with yolk still golden. Bread that's soft. Jam. Real jam. The kind made with sugar and actual fruit, not just boiled down rinds pretending to be raspberries. Historians still argue how widespread this luxury was among upper-class children, or whether Victorian literature inflated it with rose-colored ink. But you know this, the rich lived long, and they lived well. Their cradles were padded, their hands were soft, and their coughs were treated with real doctors, not tinctures from a street cart. And it's not just about comfort, it's about safety. Rich kids are watched. Nannies dress them, feed them, teach them to hold their forks right. Governesses take them to museums. Tutors prepare them for university. If they get sick, doctors visit their homes. If they fall, Someone catches them. You fall. You get up. They have time to read, to draw, to wander around in gardens, to ask questions and be answered, to collect things. You've seen boys with coin collections, girls with seashells from Brighton kept in boxes lined with silk. You collect scabs, maybe, and yet they're not always happy. You've seen rich children cry not over hunger or cold, but over a broken toy or a canceled trip. You can't decide if it's funny or sad, maybe both. They cry, and someone comforts them immediately. You cry, and someone tells you to be quiet. Still, there's something in them that feels safe, as if the world will always give them a second chance, a better doctor, a fresh start, a bed that doesn't collapse, a plate that's never empty. Here's your quirky reality check. Some upper-class Victorian children had mourning dolls, dolls dressed in black to help cope with the death of a sibling. While you can barely afford bread, they had porcelain grief companions. There are books about them too. Rich children are the stars of storybooks, Edwardian heroes in sailor suits and pinafores who solve mysteries, save kittens, and say please and thank you. You once found a tattered copy of Little Lord Fauntleroy in a rubbish heap. You read it in the alley behind your tenement and laughed so hard you cried. But even though you're not in the stories, you know how to watch. You notice details. You can spot which servants are kind, which children might sneak you a crust, which carriages belong to the houses with the best scraps in the bin, and sometimes, just sometimes, you imagine being one of them. You picture what it's like to wake up warm, to be handed clean clothes, to be told you don't have to go outside today. You imagine a pillow that smells like lavender instead of coal dust, a bath where the water is hot and has bubbles, not floating lint, a meal where you don't need to eat fast in case someone else grabs your portion. You dream. But dreaming is dangerous. It makes the return to reality harder. You look at your shoes, bare cracked, wrapped in rags. You rub your nose on your sleeve and hope no one sees. You are not like them. You weren't born into a warm bed. You were born into a fight. Still something stirs in you. Not quite envy, not quite anger, just wanting. You want a bit more. Not the pony, not the jam on toast, just warmth, a full stomach, someone to notice when you're missing. You turn away from the gate, back to your street, your tenement, your world. But that little spark of maybe follows you. Maybe one day, your father hasn't come home. It's later than usual, and the fire has already burned down to flickers. Your mother is silent. She hasn't taken off her shawl. She keeps ringing the same corner over and over. No one says the word, but you're all thinking it. And then, as if life wants to make it clear, someone knocks. 3 soft raps, the kind that say, I bring news, not greetings. And that's how it happens. Just like that. Your mother doesn't cry, not right away. She nods. She closes the door, and then she lowers herself to the floor like she's folding in half and forgets how to breathe. Your father is gone, and now you are an orphan. Or maybe half of one. But it doesn't matter. The weight is the same. You don't understand all the steps that follow, but they come fast. People whisper. Neighbors drop off scraps of food. Someone speaks the word workhouse, and your blood runs cold. You've seen what happens there. The tall walls, the locked gates, the silence that isn't peace, but order. Your mother does everything she can to keep you out. She sells what little she owns. She takes on more washing. But illness moves faster than desperation, and within weeks, maybe less, she's gone too. Now it's just you. The parish steps in. A man in a tall hat comes to collect you. You're led by the hand barely into the street. You look back once at the building where you were born, where your mum held your feverish head, where your dad once sang after 2 pints. It already feels like a dream. You're taken to the workhouse. Let's be clear. This is not an orphanage with soft beds and warm porridge. This is Victorian institutionalization, and it's closer to prison than protection. Children are separated by age and gender. You're scrubbed down, not kindly, and given a new set of clothes that fit no one. Your own rags are taken and burned. The dormitory is a sea of iron beds lined in rows. No curtains, no privacy, just a whispering, sniffling mass of orphans. The air smells like boiled cabbage and fear. You're assigned a number. You're told when to wake, when to eat, when to be silent. Everything is regimented. Everything is monitored. If you talk without permission, you're punished. If you cry too loud, someone tells you to stop being dramatic. Historians still debate the true purpose of Victorian workhouses. Were they shelters for the needy, or social machines meant to deter poverty by making it as unpleasant as possible? The answer probably is both. You wake early, before dawn. You make your bed with military precision. You file into the dining hall for breakfast gruel again. No talking. You eat fast. You return your bowl and line up for inspection. Your workday begins immediately. Yes, work. Even here. The younger children pick oakum, pulling apart old ship ropes into fibers to be used for caulking. The work is repetitive, painful, and pointless. Your fingers bleed. You're told to keep going. Older kids do laundry scrub floors, break stones. You move through the day like a shadow of yourself. Your back aches. Your head pounds. You start to forget things. Your birthday. Your parents' voices. The sound of your name spoken kindly. Quirky detail of the day. Some workhouses had punishment meals for children who misbehaved. Think dry bread water and something called gruel number 2, a thinner, more miserable version of regular gruel. Because somehow, yes, it could get worse. Your one relief comes in the evenings when you're allowed into the yard. You don't run. You sit. You stare at the sky and try to remember what it felt like to choose, to wander, to laugh. Sometimes visitors come, officials, priests, kind-faced women with soft voices. They pat your head. They tell you to be good. They bring a Bible or a needlepoint kit. You nod. You say thank you. You go back inside. There are moments, though, small ones. A girl with missing teeth shows you how to tie your blanket tighter so you stay warmer. A boy with an older brother teaches you a rude song that makes you laugh until you snort cabbage through your nose. You watch someone sneak an extra potato roll from the kitchen and divide it into 4 pieces, 1 for each of you. It's dry. It's wonderful. But the workhouse is not home. It never will be. It's not meant to be. And then one day, you're summoned. There's a man here. He needs help on a farm. He's willing to take in a child, one strong enough to carry water-feed chickens scrub floors. You're chosen. Why you? Who knows? But you're given back your name, a bundle of clothes, and told to thank the master before you go. You leave without looking back. The farm isn't worse, but it isn't better. It's hard work, longer hours, fewer other children. You sleep in a loft. You eat when the work is done. The man doesn't hit you. Much. The woman ignores you. Entirely. You miss the laughter in the tenement. You miss your mum's rough lullabies. You miss even the rats. You were poor before, but you were loved, and that's the real loss. Not your bed, not your clothes, not even your name. It's the absence of arms around you when you're cold, of someone to brush your hair, of someone to say, "You did your best today. You work harder now. You grow quieter." But the memory of warmth flickers like a candle inside you, because someday you whisper to yourself, someday you won't be the orphan anymore. You'll be more. You run. You don't remember deciding to exactly. One moment you're in the field, hauling buckets that slosh and bruise your knees. The next, you're walking away, fast, toward the horizon, toward anywhere else. You have nothing but the clothes on your back and a half-eaten turnip you swiped from the animal feed bin. It's not bravery. It's not even a plan. It's desperation, and maybe a whisper of hope. You're a runaway now. It sounds dramatic, but it happens more often than anyone admits. Victorian England is full of children on the move, orphans, chimney boys, lost girls, fired apprentices, escapees from the workhouse. You blend in easily, another ragged shape in the mist. The road is long, muddy, cold. You follow the tracks, hoping they lead to a town, a city somewhere, with lights and food and people who don't see you as just another pair of working hands. Your stomach growls. You gnaw the turnip slowly. It tastes like dirt. You save half. You sleep that night in a ditch. The stars are clear. You shiver until you fall asleep, only to be jolted awake by a fox scream that sounds almost human. You don't sleep again. By the 3rd day, your legs ache. Your shoes fall apart. Blisters bloom. Hunger sharpens. And then finally, you reach at London, or maybe Manchester, or Liverpool. Wherever you are, it's big and dangerous. Cities are not soft places. They're full of noise and smoke and alleyways that look like mouths ready to swallow you. You're small alone and easy to ignore unless someone wants something from you. You meet the others almost immediately. Other runaways, scrappers, lost kids. They clock you by the look in your eye. You learn quick, never show you're new. Never ask questions out loud. Never cry where anyone can see. Someone tells you about lodging houses where you can sleep for a penny a night. That's if you earn it. So you beg. You wipe shoes. You sell bits of coal you didn't pay for. You steal if you're desperate enough. You are. Victorian lodging houses are not charming. They're rows of straw mats in long, stinking rooms. The air is thick with breath fleas and fear. People snore, mutter, cough. You wrap your arms around your knees and sleep sitting up so no one takes your boots. And if you don't have the penny, you sleep outside, on the church steps, under a cart, one night in a coal bin until someone lit it. Still, you survive. You start to learn the city, where to find scraps, which stalls toss the best leftovers, which streets have constables, and which have crooked alleymen. You discover a bakery where the girl at the back door sometimes leaves crusts on the windowsill. She never looks at you, but she leaves them. And then someone offers you a job. They're always smiling when they do. It might be delivering parcels, might be cleaning the back room of a pub, might be running errands for men who don't like questions. At first it seems fine. You're working, you're earning, you're fed. But the smiles don't reach their eyes, and the jobs get darker. You carry letters you're not supposed to read. You deliver packages you're told not to open. You wait outside buildings and watch. You follow people. You don't ask why. And if you don't take the job, there are other kids who will. Desperation is a powerful employer. Historians still argue over how many street children ended up involved in crime rings, whether they were truly exploited or simply had no other option. But you know the truth. Because you're in it, sometimes you get caught. A constable grabs your collar. You're dragged to a station, interrogated, maybe hit. You lie always. You say you're 12 when you're 10. You say your parents are waiting at home. They never check. You're let go, back into the streets. Still, you find slivers of light. A soup kitchen, a church basement, a woman with more cats than teeth who lets you sleep under her stairwell. You help her carry firewood. She gives you a boiled egg. You cry when she's not looking. Quirky fact. For today, in Victorian cities, some runaways posed as crossing sweeps. They'd clean a patch of road and ask passers-by for pennies in return for dry boots. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes they got kicked. You try it. You sweep with a broken broom and your shirt sleeve. Someone drops a halfpenny. You nearly pass out from excitement. You get bolder. You climb fences, sneak into music halls through the back. You listen to songs you don't understand and laugh when the crowd does. You dance in the street for coins. One night, someone calls you clever. It feels like a prize. But the streets are not kind for long. You see other runaways disappear. A girl who went off with a man in a tall hat and never came back. A boy who stole from the wrong stall and was found face down in the canal. A younger one, barely 6, who got sick and was buried in a grave with no name. You wonder when your time will come, and then maybe it doesn't. Maybe, just maybe, you survive. You get older, smarter, faster. You find a steadier gig sweeping in a workshop. The pay is terrible, but you sleep indoors. You get a coat. You wash your face. You're still on your own. But now you know how to navigate. You know which stalls offer scraps, which doors are never locked, which churches will let you in when it rains. You've run away from more than a house. You've run into yourself. You don't belong anywhere, but you're still here. And in Victorian England, that counts for something. You're older now, though not much taller, and certainly not much heavier. You still work. You still scavenge. But sometimes, if the day isn't too long and the stomach isn't too empty, you get a few moments to chase something else entirely. Fun. Yes, even in the soot-stained alleys and foul-smelling slums of Victorian England, kids like you manage to laugh. It's not polished. It's not gentle. But it's there raw, chaotic, and fleeting. You take your joy in strange, sometimes downright revolting places. Take mudlarking, for instance. You've done it a dozen times now. At low tide, you trudge into the muck of the Thames, digging with bare hands through the slippery riverbed for anything worth selling. Bits of rope coins, pottery shards, teeth, yes, teeth. Dentists paid for human teeth. You hope the ones you find didn't come out naturally, and it's weirdly thrilling. The cold water, the squelch underfoot, the race to spot something shiny before the others do. Sometimes you pretend you're on a treasure hunt. Sometimes you are. Then there's gambling. You'd be surprised how young it starts. You and the other alley kids throw buttons, bones, or pebbles like dice. You bet your bread crust on which rat will cross the alley fastest. You bet a turnip slice on coin tosses. No one has much to wager, but that makes it more exciting. And when you win even just a ragged half penny, you feel rich. For a minute, there's a game called knucklebones, played with sheep joints, polished smooth. You flick them, toss them, catch them in specific patterns. You learn quick, or lose what little you have. Another favorite nuts in May, which is basically tug of war, meets wrestling, meets try not to rip your only shirt. You lose a sleeve once. Worth it. You make your own toys. A stick becomes a sword. A string becomes a game of cat's cradle. A tin can is a drum, then a helmet, then a home for a beetle. Everything is something. Everything is play if you want it to be badly enough. And of course, there are puppet shows. They appear in market squares, alley corners, even behind pubs. Someone sets up a little booth, and out come Mr. Punch and Judy smacking each other with sticks, yelling in funny voices, collapsing with exaggerated flair. You laugh until you choke. The stories are all the same, silly violent, a little weird. But they're yours. Sometimes you sneak into music halls, slipping in through unlocked doors or cracked windows. You watch from the shadows as dancers spin and singers belt out songs about sailors' love and sausages. You don't understand all the jokes, but the rhythm stays with you for days. You hum while working. You tap beats on brick walls. You feel almost normal. Historians sometimes romanticize this, call it childhood resilience. Others say it's just survival dressed up in whimsy. But you don't care what it's called. It keeps you alive, because even in the worst weeks, when your fingers are cut and your belly's hollow, Those brief bursts of laughter remind you you're still a person, not just a body doing work. Sometimes you chase after the rag and bone man's cart, not for scraps, but for the joy of running. You dart through puddles, shouting nonsense, daring each other to jump farther, run faster, shout louder. You fall, scrape your knee, and laugh anyway. You play games with chalk and rocks. You mark off squares for hopscotch, even though your shoes barely count. You trade stories, wild, stupid, glorious stories about ghosts in the workhouse, talking dogs, and sewer crocodiles. Are they true? Who cares? Quirky fact of the day: there really were rumors of giant pigs living in the sewers of Victorian London. Some kids swore they saw one. You still look twice at drain grates just in case. And then there are the holidays, rare but radiant. On Guy Fawkes Night, you gather sticks, build bonfires, and burn in effigy. You don't fully understand the history, but you love the fire. You love the noise. You love the excuse to yell and stomp and be seen. On Christmas, if someone's feeling kind, you get a tangerine, or a boiled sweet, or just a pat on the head and a God bless. You light a candle. You sing carols in the street. One year, a rich man handed out mince pies. You ate yours in 2 bites, then licked the paper. You never forget that mince pie, but even your fun has rules. If you laugh too loud, someone shushes you. If you run too far, someone yells. If you draw attention, someone tries to use you for work, for errands, for worse. You learn to balance joy with caution. You smile without showing teeth. You laugh with one eye open, and it's not always safe. A game can turn into a fight. A bet can spiral. You once saw a boy thrown into the canal over a game of jacks gone wrong. You hear about girls offered pennies to play a different kind of game. You hear about boys caught stealing marbles who never came home. So you play in the cracks between shifts, between meals, between danger and dusk. You grab joy with both hands and hold it like it's slipping through your fingers. Because it is. But those seconds, those minutes, when you forget the hunger and the cold and the noise, those are everything. You lie down that night on your bit of floor, your corner of mattress, or your patch of dirt, and you smile, just a little, just to yourself, because today you got to laugh. And in Victorian England, that's rare treasure. You wake up one morning and realize your voice sounds different. It cracks when you speak. Your limbs feel too long for your clothes, and your face still streaked with soot, and sleep has begun to look just a little less like a child's. You're growing up, sort of. Puberty in Victorian England isn't marked with celebration or ceremony. There's no party, no cake, no awkward family talk. It just happens. Quietly, roughly, often painfully, and far earlier than you'd wish. You're 13, maybe 14, or 12, but tall enough to lie. Age is fluid here, not because anyone's modern about it, but because no one has your birth certificate, and childhood ends when your body stops fitting into tight spaces. For boys, the voice drops. Muscles harden from labor, not sport. Hair sprouts in odd places, and no one explains it. You just start noticing things, smells, impulses, confusion. You feel restless, angry for no reason. Your body aches in new ways. For girls, it's different. Your chest starts to grow, and suddenly everyone treats you differently. The stares change. The rules tighten. You're told to keep your dress hem longer, your laughter quieter, your head down. Then your monthly bleeding starts. You're not prepared. No one warned you. You think you're dying. But an older girl pulls you aside and whispers the truth. She shows you how to stuff your rags, how to hide the stains. If you're lucky, someone gives you a bit of linen to wash and reuse. If not, you use what you have anything. There's no privacy, no sanitary bin. Just you, your pain, and a bucket of cold water. Historians still argue whether Victorian society deliberately kept girls ignorant about their own bodies, or whether it was simply a byproduct of shame and silence passed down generationally. Either way, you know now, growing up isn't empowering. It's exhausting. The worst part, you don't get to stop working. If anything, you work more. You're stronger now. So you haul heavier sacks, work longer hours, earn the same measly coins. There's no raise for puberty, no recognition, just more expectation. For boys, this might mean you're apprenticed if your family had connections. Blacksmith, carpenter, cooper. But that's the lucky route. For most, you just get promoted to harder labor. You haul coal instead of sorting it. You drive the dray cart instead of brushing the horse. And if you hesitate, there's always a younger kid behind you, waiting to take your place. For girls, it often means domestic service. The moment you show signs of maturity, you're sent into service, a fancy way of saying you now cook, clean, and scrub for someone else, often miles from home. You might be 13, caring for an entire household, waking before dawn, sleeping beside the scullery with the mice. You wear a maid's uniform wool stiff hand-me-down. You're scolded for spots punished for crumbs invisible unless needed. And God help you if the master gets too friendly. Or the mistress too cruel. You have no rights. No privacy. You don't get weekends. You don't get sick days. You get one Sunday afternoon a month if they remember. You miss your siblings. You miss being just a kid in the street. You miss your name because now everyone calls you girl. Marriage creeps in around the edges. You're 15, maybe 16, maybe not. It doesn't matter. You're old enough to wed now, or be wedded to. You've seen girls your age with babies already. You've seen boys your age drinking like their fathers, already worn down to stubble and resentment. And don't think love is always part of it. Sometimes it's arranged. Sometimes it's rushed. Sometimes it's the result of a situation. And marriage is just damage control. You don't wear white. You don't throw flowers. You say your vows while a baby cries nearby, and wonder if this counts as a beginning or just a different kind of ending. Your body keeps changing. You grow tall, but bent. Your back curves under weight. Your knees pop when you stand. You're 17 and feel 60. Quirky coming-of-age tidbit. In some parts of Victorian England, boys were given beer as part of their manhood routine. Not because it was cool, but because water was often so filthy that beer was genuinely safer. You drink it with dinner, and go to work tipsy at 14. No one bats an eye. You start losing teeth. Your joints ache. You cough in the mornings, a wet, rattling sound you ignore. You know a boy who dropped dead at 18. Heart, they said, but it was probably work dust and a lifetime of no rest. And the strangest part, you still feel like a child inside. Sometimes. You still want to chase dogs, play jacks, climb a fence just to see what's on the other side. But you don't. You carry yourself differently now. You speak less. You walk with your hands in your pockets, your shoulders tight. You watch everything. You trust little, but somewhere inside, you buried beneath the soot and silence there's a flicker, a dream. It might be silly. It might be small, but it's yours. You want a bakery, a room of your own, a pair of boots that aren't patched. You want to keep growing, even if it hurts. You go to bed that night with a dull ache in your chest. Is it love, hunger, lung rot? You don't know. You just pull the blanket tighter and whisper a promise to yourself. Not yet. Not done. Not finished. You're 25. Maybe. The exact numbers fuzzy, now blurred by years of work, cold noise, and the constant calculation of how many farthings you've got and how many more you'll need to survive the week. You're not a child anymore, not even close. But you're also not quite what people call an adult, because in Victorian England, you don't come of age. You just age. And you've made it this far, which frankly is a miracle. You look in the mirror, if you've still got one, and see someone who could pass for 40. Your face is lean, your teeth are stained or missing, your hands are rough as bark. Your back has a permanent bend. Your joints pop when you stand. You get winded walking upstairs, but you keep walking anyway. You always have. You've already lost friends. Some to sickness, some to accidents, some to slow, silent deaths that no one talks about. You remember their faces. You remember the ones who disappeared without warning. You still walk past the corners they used to sit on. Now when you see children in the street, the age you once were, you stare for a second too long. Not out of pity, not even nostalgia, just recognition. You know their shoulders are already learning how to carry things. You see them walking the same hard road, ducking the same dangers, but you've outlasted the worst of it. The chances of making it this far were slim. In the slums of Victorian England, life expectancy hovered around 30 years, sometimes less for the poor. Not because people dropped dead on their birthday, but because so many never made it out of childhood. And you were the child no one bet on. You've dodged death in more forms than you can count. Cholera factory belts, exploding lamps, soot lungs, rats landlords, and heartbreak. Each one took a piece of you, but not enough to stop you. You work. Still. Maybe as a washer, maybe in a bakery, or a tannery, or a foundry. Maybe you have a small market stall fruit on the good days, pickles on the bad. You know how to stretch a halfpenny into a meal, how to spot a lie, how to make soup from bones and hope you might live alone. Or maybe in a room you rent with 3 others, all just trying to keep the walls from falling in. The bed's still hard. The air's still damp. But there's a rug now. You saved for it. It's ugly. You love it. You know how to make tea last 3 cups. You know how to fold paper into a hat. You know what makes babies stop crying and which herbs ease a cough. You've become the person others ask for advice because somehow, without noticing, you became the grown-up. And you still carry all those memories of mudlarking and matchsticks, of dripping cellars and chimney soot, of frozen mornings and bug-bitten nights, of hiding bread in your shirt, of waiting outside kitchens for bones. But you carry strength too. You're quick to laugh, slow to trust. You've seen cruelty in corners and kindness where no one expected it. You remember the girl who shared her last crust, the old man who showed you how to fix your shoes, the one constable who looked away when you needed him to. You've learned to love quietly. Maybe you married. Maybe you didn't. Maybe your heart broke and you kept going anyway. Maybe you had a child and swore they wouldn't grow up like you. Maybe they did, but you tried. Quirky grown-up reality. Some older Victorian laborers used beer mixed with milk as a tonic, believing it built strength. You've tried it. You're not convinced, but it beat plain water. Your body bears the map of everything. Scars, limp, a cough that never fully healed. But you know what each mark means. You're still here, and you don't dream of castles anymore, or carriages, or jam. You dream of quiet, a room with a lock, warm socks, a kettle that whistles when it's ready. Sometimes, in the rare peace between shifts or chores or street noise, you sit and let your mind wander. You remember your mother's voice, your brother's laugh, that one Christmas with the mince pie. You remember being small, cold, hungry, alone, and you remember surviving. You've lived a life squeezed between walls and wants, a life that never let up, that never paused, that never really allowed for joy without cost. But you've made it. You small, forgotten, overlooked, you've lasted longer than anyone thought you would. And when you lie down tonight, even if it's still on a thin mattress, even if the air still smells like dust and onion skin, you'll know something most people never do. You were a child in Victorian England, and you lived. The wind down begins slowly, like the quiet hush after a storm. You lie back, your eyes heavy, your limbs still. The sounds of the street are fading now. The clatter of hooves, the rustle of paper boys, the soft thud of a closing door. All of it drifts away like smoke in the evening air. Your breathing slows, steady, gentle, the kind of rhythm your younger self could only dream of when curled up in a scratchy blanket beside a half-dead fire. But now, here you are, still, whole, quiet. You made it through nights when you could see your breath in the dark, through days when your stomach felt like a clenched fist, through years when survival meant silence, sacrifice, and small, stolen moments of joy. And through it all, you never stopped moving forward, even when you didn't know what forward was. Now, your thoughts drift backward not with pain, but with peace. You remember the flicker of candlelight on the wall, the scrape of a slate pencil, the thrill of catching a crust of bread mid-air, the chill of a December morning soot still stuck under your fingernails. But you also remember laughter, rough and raw, yes, but real. You remember the voice of a friend, long gone, a touch on your shoulder, the quiet kindness of someone who didn't look away. Let the past soften now. Let it dissolve into the mist. You've carried it long enough. Your eyes close. You're warm now, fed, safe, and for the first time, in a long time, you don't need to be anywhere. Don't need to prove anything. Don't need to listen for rats or boots or coughing in the next room. Just rest. You're no longer surviving. You're just here.